Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome or welcome back to my channel. Today I have a books beside my bed video for you where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. This is my reading week from the 10th until the 16th of June. I was reading a lot of things for various projects this week, some of which have already come out, some of which are hopefully coming out this week. So I'm going to be talking about 6 of the things that I have read this week, but there are a few other bits and pieces sprinkled in that I haven't had a chance to share with you yet. So stay tuned, those are coming. The one project that is out is the Batman and Joker The Deadly Duo vlog, which went out on Friday, and this was where I read the first 7 issues of this new line from DC, and I had a really good time reading it. I always love reading Batman comics, but I seem to go long periods and then I forget where I can dip in and dip out, and I don't need to have a whole lot of context around the stories. So this one was perfect for that. But if you want to hear all of my thoughts, please go check out the vlog. I will leave it linked on the screen. The first book that I want to mention is a review copy. This is Sunshine on Vinegar Street by Karen Comer. This is an Australian middle grade title that was sent to me for review by Alan and Unwin, so thank you very much to them. This is actually set in Melbourne. For anyone who doesn't know, this skipping Vinegar girl is actually an icon here in Victoria or Melbourne, and I just loved reading this book. It was great. I didn't realize this was a verse novel. It's really cool. So it is about Freya, whose entire life has been upended when her mum moves to Abbotsford. And not only are they moving from the suburbs into the inner city, but they are moving from a house into an apartment. Freya has a fear of lifts. She's also had to leave behind all of her friends. She is a basketballer and she's had to, come to a new school. She has to make new friends. She has to join a new team and she has to, carve out her place in that new team. And she feels like everything is stacked against her. On top of this, her biological father has moved to another state. She is an IVF baby and her parents are friends. They've never been together romantically, but she feels the loss of her dad as well. And so there is all of this going on and she is trying to process it and trying to deal with it. And she doesn't really want to make everything here work. And slowly she begins to make connections with other people around her and to see that maybe this isn't the worst thing ever. It's just different. And it was a really wonderful story. The really cool thing about this is there are a whole lot of basketball analogies. So different sections are broken down by different terms in basketball, but also to one of their other meanings that may not be basketball related. I'll try and find an example, like rebounds. So it has in basketball when a player gains possession of the ball after a missed shot, life when you pick yourself up after something hasn't gone well. And that sort of spearheads each section of the story. This was really great. I'm really grateful that I was sent this and I got a chance to review it because I've been seeing it everywhere. I just hadn't had a chance to pick it up yet. I also buddy read Mortal Follies by Alexis with Brie. This is Alexis Hall's most recent historical romance release. It is a sapphic fantasy story and it was a whole lot of fun. It has Alexis Hall's signature quirky characters and fun banter. It is about a cursed noblewoman who ends up having to go to a rumoured witch for help. Our main protagonist, Malis, is quite a practical woman. She finds herself cursed by a vindictive deity, and this results in her finding herself in very compromising situations in public or in very dangerous situations, and it seems like the only person that she can turn to is Lady Georgiana Landrake, who is colloquially known by the Ton as the Duke of Annandale because she's the sole surviving member of her family. Her father and her brothers all died, and so people believe she's a witch because they think that she may have had something to do with their deaths. As I said, it is a sapphic historical romance. It is closed door, so be aware of that going into it. A lot of the side characters are very weirdly endearing and I just really enjoyed reading them, and the banter that we have with the various characters. And of course, it's Alexis Hall. His writing is just beautiful, so it's always a good time. Then I finally read Sweep of the Heart by Ilona Andrews. And normally at the start of the month, I read my Ilona Andrews books straight away, but I kept putting it off because I'm like, I know this is the last one I'm going to get for a little while, and it kind of makes me sad. I'm definitely going to have to reread this again. Being the 5th book in the series, I can't say too much specifically about what goes on in the book, except the premise of this particular book is that Dina and Sean are hosting basically the intergalactic version of The Bachelor for the ruler of the Dominion, which is a very large group of planets in the solar system, and they have quite a bit of power. And they agree to host this under tension because the Dominion has access to a gateway to a planet where one of their allies is being held hostage, and they desperately want access to that. So they're kind of coerced into this situation. The great thing about this series is that characters from previous books constantly come back into the story. So we have Gaston and Cookie in this book. I love both of them. Tony is Tony and around and doing all sorts of really cool, powerful magic things, but also just basically being a sucker for Oro's cooking. We finally get some more of Caldania's history. There is lots of space politics, and I love all of that stuff. I think I've talked about that every time I've talked about an Innkeeper Chronicles book. And one of my favorite scenes, and I will talk about this more when we have our live show, which I think we have to push back a week, so just be aware of that. It probably won't be the last weekend in June, it might be the first weekend in July, so just keep that in mind. There is one scene where Sean, Dina, and Tony are humming What Is Love at a very inappropriate time, and I think I about fell off the couch when I was reading that. So it's the little things. It's the little things. I'm really hoping I get a chance to reread it before the live show because so much happens in this book and it's great. Okay, the next book that I read was Brick Walls by L.A. Witt. This was recommended to me by Dory's Paperback Reads on my last Books Beside My Bed video, and they said if you liked Rookie Mistake by Anna Szabo and L.A. Witt, you'll probably like Brick Walls. Accurate. I did. I loved it. It was great and I want more. This is an hockey romance between two goalies that play for the same team. Both Sol and Josh have had really terrible past years playing hockey. Prior to that, they were quite well known, well regarded, but Sol has been dealing with a cocaine addiction and Josh has been through a messy divorce. And both those things have seen their careers take a bit of a dive. But the Seattle team is in desperate need of goalies. They've lost all of their goalies and they need them, and so they are traded to the Seattle team and they are vying for the starter position and trying to redeem themselves within the sport that they love. The only thing is that the team doesn't know that many years before they were both together romantically, and it ended really badly when Sol's addiction came out. And there is a lot of hurt that the two of them are working through because they were very much in love, but there is hurt and anger and all of this that they are trying to sort through, and it initially impacts their play on the team until they begin to find their equilibrium and begin to actually communicate effectively. So it is a second chance romance. There is a lot of hockey on page and it is great. There's a lot of conversations about the sport. There is also a lot of talk about addiction. So Sol struggles with his addiction. He is no longer using. He has been clean for a couple of years, but we see his constant struggle with addiction. And that is made even harder when both Sol and Josh begin to suspect that there are people on the team who have drug habits. And it's really that sort of brings them together, and they begin to be able to see the perspective of the other person from what happened in their past when Sol was in the midst of using. And at times it was kind of hard to read. There is also on-page mention of concussion and migraines, and there is also mention of a really messy divorce between Josh and his husband. In particular, there is a lot of gaslighting from his ex-husband. This one was a really easy book just to sink into and start reading. It is long, but it didn't feel that way when you were reading it. And I was very invested in all of these characters. And then because I seem to be having a very Ilona Andrews week, Magic Claims came out, so I read that this week. This is the second book in the Kate Daniels Wilmington Years series. This was great because this felt exactly like the original Kate Daniels series, but with both Kate and Curran's perspective. And you can tell that Ilona Andrews are building something new with these characters, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. The whole premise of Kate and Curran moving away from Atlanta was so that they could keep a low profile, they could raise their son, and they could just start a new life away from pack politics and whatnot. And so they're trying to keep this low profile, but then they're approached by someone who offers them something they really can't refuse in exchange for them helping out with a magic forest that is threatening a local town. And so Kate and Curran go along. They really can't help themselves. And this explores the fact that they are who they are. Their nature is not something that they can just box away and put in a corner because they think that's the right thing to do. Like, they are both inherently leaders and fighters, and they can have that quiet life for a period, but that's not something that is sustainable for them in the long run. They're used to being in the thick of things. And so this is a book where they begin to work through that. We get to see how things are being established. We find out a lot about what's happening back in Atlanta, and some of it is not fantastic. A lot of this really felt like Kate and Curran accepting who they are, recognizing the strengths that they both have, and just being awesome. Like, I loved this book a whole lot. I have got a physical copy coming because I want to reread it. I'm just really enjoying what they're doing. I'm excited because I think with the first book in this spin-off series, it sort of felt a bit like a dessert project series thing that, you know, they might be writing books here and there. This one feels like they're building something new, and that makes me excited because I love Kate Daniels. And the last book that I read this week was a novella in the Elite series. I'm just continuing to try and read the books in the series because I want to get to Mathematic's book. And while I know I don't have to read all of them to read them because they're all standalone books by different authors within a shared universe, I'm something of a completionist, and so we're continuing. So the book is called Ace of Maids by K.L Hiers. This is an romantic suspense novella. It is about Dash, who is a professional cleaner and owner of a crematorium, and he is invited to be part of the anonymous and elite club for people in the underworld. And he goes there one night for the first time and he meets Tommy, who happens to be the grandson of the Don of the local mafia. And he starts hitting on Dash, and we know that something is not quite right within Tommy's family organization. Despite Tommy constantly propositioning him, Dash eventually just sort of leaves. But he is then hired by the family to clean up a scene, and when he gets to this scene, he discovers 5 bodies and Tommy, who is still alive but injured. And suddenly Dash is then caught up in mafia politics and scheming, and he and Tommy are racing to figure out whether Tommy's uncle is behind everything or whether someone else might be. This was just a very fast-paced, quick little read, and I'm curious. We're meeting a lot of different characters and a lot of different members of the underworld through this series, so it's very intriguing. All right, so those are the books that I have read this week. In the comments, I'd love to know if you have read any of them or if you're planning on picking any of them up. Feel free to share what you have been reading down below, or if you would just like to let me know that you're here, feel free to leave a lion emoji in the comments. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're staying safe and healthy. Thanks so much for watching my video, and I will see you next time. Bye.